No way, that's impossible. We're living together. You just need to sign the divorce papers. Good luck with your poor life. I stood there in a daze, holding the phone after the call was abruptly cut off. The lawyer couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jessica looked at the lawyer with a puzzled expression. The lawyer was wiping tears with a handkerchief. The CEO is actually Linda. My name is Linda. I've been married to my husband, Mike, for 2 years. We don't have children. We both work and are so busy that we often work on weekends. We hardly have time for long conversations, leading to a life of passing each other by. Therefore, we try to match our schedules and go on overseas trips during our long breaks. It's only once a year, but we both look forward to it. When we got married, we decided to buy an upper-floor condo in a Bay Area tower. It was a stretch, but we did it considering the future value of the asset. Thanks to that, we're satisfied with our current life. I have a close friend from high school, Jessica. We sometimes go out for lunch together. Jessica, being beautiful, has high standards for men. She's not married yet but has a strong desire to do so. She's always looking for well-educated, high-income men on dating apps. Especially, she won't compromise on income. One day, I was enjoying lunch with Jessica at a cafe near a park. We were together in high school and university, even in the same classes. That's why we've consulted each other about various things. As a result, we know quite a bit about each other's dating histories and types. During our student days, we shared both fun and sad times. Those are good memories now. Since I married Mike 2 years ago, we've both become busy, and the time we can meet has decreased. Now we meet only a few times a year, if that. Hey, can I come visit your condo next time? Jessica suddenly asked me. Jessica had never been to my place before. Then, on the weekend, Jessica came over to my place. I could sense her amazement even through the intercom at the entrance. Jessica kept saying, "This is amazing." The moment I opened the front door, Jessica looked impressed. "Wow, this place is like a mansion. And that elevator ride up was so long." I chose a spacious upper-floor condo because it was a once-in-a-lifetime purchase without compromising. It's even more spacious than a house. It's beautiful, really incredible. Jessica looked around the house, turning her head in every direction. Great location, and an upper floor in a high-rise like this must have cost a pretty fortune. Jessica asked with a sly smile. Yeah, it's what you'd call $1 million condominium. It's got great security too. Look here. Jessica cut me off, reacting only to the term $1 million condominium. Right, it must be over $1 million. Your husband must be making a lot. She said, eyes wide with astonishment. That was so like Jessica. She's always had high standards for men, especially regarding their income. Mike's salary is quite high for his age, I guess. I said vaguely. I felt it was tacky to be too explicit. Huh. She had a look that seemed to have some ulterior motive. Jessica said, "Can I use your bathroom?" and left the living room. I told Jessica where the bathroom was and then started preparing tea in the kitchen. Concerned about Jessica, who was taking a while to return, I was about to head to the bathroom when Jessica came back. Just replying to an email. Jessica doesn't usually make excuses like that. I felt a slight sense of unease. While enjoying the cookies Jessica brought as a gift and having tea, she asked, "Can I stay till evening?" She apparently wanted to greet Mike. Indeed, it had been since our wedding that Jessica last saw Mike. It's not unnatural for her to want to see him. I decided to check with Mike just in case. Mike happily agreed. I might finish work early, he replied in an email. I told Jessica it was okay, and then I started preparing dinner. Jessica was fiddling with her smartphone, but then stood up and headed to the bathroom again. I didn't notice while cooking, but Jessica seemed to be gone for quite a while. When she came back, she was wearing a familiar necklace. I recognized it, it was my necklace. As I stared at the necklace, Jessica flashed an embarrassed smile. How do I look? Does it suit me? She posed like a model. Seeing my stunned expression, Jessica started laughing. "Oh, come on, I'm just kidding. I just found it and thought it was cute. It must have been super expensive, right? A premium piece, for sure." Jessica rambled like a child trying to excuse a misdeed. "That's a gift for Mike. Wow, he must be really wealthy to afford something like this." Jessica sighed. But more importantly, that necklace was stored in the closet in the bedroom. Jessica must have pretended to go to the bathroom and instead went to the bedroom, peeking into the closet. That's what it seemed like. I couldn't believe her actions. However, I didn't want to come off as petty, so I simply emphasized that it was a precious item. Jessica, taking advantage of my lack of reprimand, made an outrageous request. "Can I borrow this necklace for a while?" I was speechless and fell silent. "I've got a date with a doctor I met on a dating app. I want to wear it for that. Please," she pleaded, joining her hands together as if praying. Reluctantly, I decided to lend it to her. "All right, but take good care of it. Like I said earlier, it's a gift from Mike." As soon as Jessica knew she could borrow it, she smiled and began caressing the necklace. "Of course, I understand." She seemed to pay no mind to my words. When I finished the meal prep, I pretended to go to the bathroom to check the bedroom. Sure enough, the closet in the bedroom and the chest beside the bed weren't fully closed. Jessica must have opened every drawer and door she could find. There were fingerprints on the jewelry, watches, and precious metals. Jessica might have touched things, but probably didn't intend to borrow them. The shoes seemed to have been forced on, and the heels were misshapen. This was clearly going too far. I returned to the living room and confronted Jessica. "You touched various things in the bedroom, didn't you? The shoes were misshaped, and there were fingerprints on the watch." Rather than appearing remorseful, Jessica puffed out her cheeks a bit. "Please don't do that again." Jessica returned to her normal expression and apologized, saying, "Sorry. I didn't want to dwell on this and risk straining our friendship, so I decided to just lightly laugh it off." That's when Mike came home. He was holding a box of cake. Mike and Jessica saw each other for the first time since our wedding. It was awkward at first, but they gradually warmed up to each other, making for a lively dinner. By the time we ate the cake Mike brought, they were chatting like good friends. While I was clearing the dishes and washing up, they were laughing together. "Really? My boss is terrible, right? I envy Mike's subordinates." Mike was grinning, eyes crinkling with laughter. "That's not true." I was a bit bothered by Jessica casually touching Mike, but at the time, I thought it was better than them being distant. After all, Mike wasn't a type of man Jessica usually goes out with. About a month after Jessica's visit, Mike's behavior started to change. He spent more time on his smartphone, which he usually didn't do much. He often seemed distracted when I talked to him and asked me to repeat myself. He always carried phone with him, even taking it to the bathroom. It was an obvious change. It seemed I had become a cheated-on wife. I thought about checking Mike's phone once, but I was reluctant to even touch it. Conversations between Mike and me at home became increasingly rare. Mike started working on weekends much more. Mike was hardly ever at home on weekends. Originally, we barely saw each other on weekdays, but now, not seeing each other on weekends too, it's like we're living separately within the same house. Moreover, we started sleeping in separate bedrooms under the pretext of his tiredness. I was vaguely thinking about divorce or separation when I found divorce papers on the living room table. Upon closer inspection, Mike had already signed them. Though I had suspected it, actually seeing it still shook me. With trembling hands, I called Mike. "I just got home and saw it on the table. What does this mean?" "Exactly what it looks like. I want a divorce." I pressed Mike for a proper reason. Mike said, "I've fallen in love with someone else. It's not an affair. I'm serious." It was obviously nothing but cheating. Then, I heard a familiar female voice on the phone. It was Jessica. Well, it was what I had expected. I'm dating Mike. I even want to marry him. Though I had suspected it, Hearing it confirmed made my heart race and brought on a cold sweat. I fell for Mike the moment I saw him at your house. We exchanged contact details and started messaging. One thing led to another, and here we are. Jessica's way of talking had become crude. Maybe this was her true nature. Mike says there's nothing left to talk about. Can you just sign the divorce papers and send them off? I want to talk things over, so please tell Mike to come home once. No way. We're living together now. You just need to sign the divorce papers. Good luck with your poor life. Standing dumbfounded with the abruptly ended phone call in hand, I couldn't move for a while. After that, sleepless nights continued for me. Mike didn't come home. I couldn't bring myself to touch the divorce papers lying on the living room table. They just remained there, untouched. Furthermore, Jessica kept sending me multiple photos of her and Mike together. She was flaunting her relationship with Mike. It must be an intimate relationship, but what kind of harassment is this? My mental health deteriorated, my complexion worsened, and sometimes I'd become vacant even during the day. People around me became worried and strongly suggested I go to the hospital, and I ended up being somewhat forcibly taken for treatment. Taking medication, I managed to regain some peace, and I started to be able to sleep. I could somehow go to work. But then, an unbelievable incident happened. When I returned from the hospital, something felt off inside the room. Going to the bedroom and opening the closet, I found that bags and jewelry were missing. The count of jewelry watches in the chest was off too. There was only one person who could do this. Why would she do something like this? What had I ever done to her? My insomnia relapsed, and sleepless nights continued, leaving me staggering through my days. During counseling at the hospital, when I mentioned the theft at home, I was strongly advised to consult a lawyer. I contacted the company's lawyer right away and set up an appointment. The lawyer asked me first thing, "What would you like to do?" "I'll get a divorce. I want those two to face proper consequences," I answered immediately. Surprising even myself. Just a little while ago, I was wondering what to do. I couldn't believe how easily those words came out of my mouth. Perhaps I really wanted to punish them. After being tormented so one-sidedly, it was just about getting back at them now. A week later, I received a message from Jessica. I had sent her a certified letter. "Hey, what are you thinking, sending a certified letter to my workplace?" Jessica sounded pretty angry, her voice filled with rage. "You must have expected at least this much. Anyway, I'm leaving everything to my lawyer now." I hung up the phone. Jessica called several times after that, but I ignored all of them. Then, Mike called. I had sent a certified letter to his parents' house. Apparently, his affair being exposed at home caused a huge uproar. I wanted to burst out laughing at his self-inflicted predicament, but managed to restrain myself. Feeling that leaving it all to the lawyer wouldn't be enough to calm my feelings, I decided to confront them both. I would denounce them thoroughly on the spot. The lawyer arranged the date and time, and we decided to have the discussion at the law office. A few days later, the two reluctantly showed up at the law office. I thought they would bring their own lawyer, but it seemed they came alone. Jessica stormed into the office, flinging the door open. Mike followed, looking uncomfortable. "Finally, we meet." "You coward." Jessica made no effort to hide her anger, but Mike stepped forward, trying to calm her down. "Well, you've been running away all this time. Our wedding's been delayed because of you." Jessica looked like she might throw her bag at me any moment. Mike was desperately trying to hold her back. As I watched them with a pitiful feeling, the lawyer nodded at me. "Please calm down. If any violence or abusive language occurs, we will immediately call the police. Understood?" The mention of police made Jessica stiffen. With the lawyer's intervention, Jessica and Mike took their seats, becoming calmer. We sat across from each other at the office table, ready to start the discussion. "Mike, you're seeking a divorce, correct?" Jessica was sitting haughtily, while Mike slumped, looking small. "We agree to the divorce. However, since your relationship is adultery, we will ask for alimony." Is there any significance to this? Mike's face clouded over. I'll agree to the divorce, but once the alimony is paid, don't contact us. Ever. I quietly nodded in agreement. Jessica looked displeased. Maybe she expected more resistance from me. When the lawyer began discussing the alimony amount, Jessica snapped. I said any amount is fine. We have plenty of money. Jessica sat arrogantly with her arms crossed. The lawyer looked at her with interest, saying, "Oh? Yes, didn't you research? Mike is the president of a jewelry company with a yearly revenue of $2 billion. Mike looked up, frantically trying to restrain Jessica's arm. Jessica, her face flushed, continued excitedly. Alimony for an affair is nothing to us. I'll even give a proper share of the property. Mike was trying hard to calm her down. Jessica shook off his hand and continued. You can barely make ends meet on your salary, right? She scoffed with a laugh. The lawyer burst into uncontrollable laughter. Jessica looked at him with a puzzled expression. The lawyer wiped tears with a handkerchief. Actually, the president is Linda. What? Jessica was dumbstruck, her mouth hanging open. Mike hung his head, his body trembling slightly. Mike is just an ordinary employee with no position at Linda's company. I am Linda's corporate lawyer. Jessica started laughing loudly. What are you talking about? Are you really a lawyer? Can lawyers lie? The lawyer calmly replied. Why not ask Mike next to you if what I said is a lie? Mike, meanwhile, just bit his lip, looking down. Jessica, growing anxious, grabbed Mike's arms and began shaking him. You said you were the president of a $2 billion jewelry company. That's not a lie, right? Mike remained silent. He covered his face with his hands, uttering inaudible moans. Jessica, growing more desperate, gripped his arms tighter, repeatedly asking, Answer me. It's not a lie, right? Mike finally whispered in a raspy voice. I'm sorry. The room fell into a deep silence. Jessica's strength seemed to leave her body, and she let her hands that were gripping Mike fall limply. You said you were the president of a company making $2 billion a year. She muttered it almost to herself. Mike's single apology had plunged Jessica into despair. She stood up, trembling. It's a lie, right? There's no way you're the president. Jessica pointed at me, accusingly. Why didn't I know about this? After all we've shared. I spoke to Jessica calmly, as if guiding her. Just because we're close friends doesn't mean I tell you everything. Especially since you were so fixated on money, I had no intention of telling you. I looked Jessica straight in the eyes without averting my gaze. Jessica seemed to lose all her energy and slumped down. Then, that house? Of course, the house is in my name. So, Mike will be the one leaving. Jessica fell silent, and Mike continued to hold his head. Mike probably didn't want to come here. He knew this would happen. But if he didn't come here, things would be worse. It's hell either way for him now. Mike is left with nothing but hell waiting for him. The lawyer began to present the evidence I had gathered. First, these photos of Mike and Jessica together. They were the photos sent to my phone, now printed. The lawyer placed an IC recorder on the table and played the recorded conversation. Why would you send something like this? I just wanted to share our happiness with you. Jessica's voice filled the room, while Mike seemed to be holding back tears. Hey, still clinging to the past. I want a divorce quickly. I know what you're clinging to. It's Mike's income. He's the president of a $2 billion jewelry company, right? You hid it because you thought I might take it. Jessica, perhaps embarrassed, covered her face with her hands. Hurry up and divorce, and leave that condo. It'll be mine soon. Too bad Mike didn't come back to you. I'll give you as much alimony as you want, poor thing. Your aim was the money, not Mike. I'm speechless at how you've been deceived, Mike. Mike looked down, tears spilling onto his pants. Mike and Jessica fell silent. Do you think this is over? What else is there? Jessica, You broke into the house when Linda wasn't there and stole several items, didn't you? I felt relieved at the lawyer's calm demeanor. Mike looked shocked. Apparently unaware of this. Hey, what's this about stealing? Jessica bit her lower lip, her hands shaking. No, not me. I don't know anything. The lawyer placed a tablet on the table and played a video. It showed Jessica sneaking into the bedroom, taking bags and jewelry, and stuffing them into her bag. Jessica stared wide-eyed at the footage. What is this? Why are you recording me? Isn't this illegal surveillance? Mike covered his face with his hands and sighed. Our house always had security cameras. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? Who would think you'd break in to steal? I felt a headache coming on from their foolish exchange. And you used my key without permission. I wanted those things. It's your fault for not buying them for me. The two began arguing, ignoring us. The lawyer and I could only look on in disbelief. Please save your arguments for later. Regarding this theft, we will be filing a police report. Jessica seemed to panic at the mention of the police. The police? That's a bit much, isn't it? I just borrowed something from a friend. I never gave you permission to borrow anything. I spoke to her calmly. Besides, you're not a friend or anything. You were just a classmate. That's why I'm filing a police report. Jessica seemed to realize she was defeated and her attitude became sullen. Don't say that. I'll pay for it. I'll compensate, just please don't call the police. Jessica started to kneel and apologize. I looked down at her and said coldly, You're going to compensate? The value of what you stole is more than your annual income. Are you sure about that? Jessica was speechless. And there's also the matter of the alimony. Jessica turned to Mike, pleading in a tearful voice. You'll pay, right? Even if you're not the president, you still earn well, right? Mike was silent, looking down. He can't pay it 'cause he's about to be fired. Mike looked up in surprise. That's correct. Since leaving the house, Mike has not shown up for work. Plus, with this commotion, there have been complaints from his boss. Mike looked like he might collapse on the floor. But there's still the property division, right? I'll pay with that. That's not possible. Linda and Mike have a prenuptial agreement regarding property. You didn't hear anything from Mike, did you? He never told you the inconvenient truths. I looked at Mike with disdain. The lawyer placed the contract on the table. The agreement states that if the marriage lasts less than 3 years, neither party can claim the other's property. You're currently in the 2nd year of marriage. Jessica tried to grab the document as if to tear it up. You should handle that document carefully. It's a notarized deed, and you could be held legally accountable for damaging it. At the mention of crime, Jessica stopped. She began to half-heartedly plead with Mike. Mike, you have savings, right? Use that to pay. Mike looked at Jessica with resentful eyes. What money? You always wanted sushi, steak, this, that, there's no way I have any savings left. It appears that way. And it seems he has debts from unsavory sources. Jessica's shoulders slumped. It's a pitiable sight. The glamorous appearance that used to make men turn their heads is nowhere to be seen. But this is the result of the seeds she herself sowed. The two sat, looking haggard and lost, muttering, this wasn't supposed to happen, and what will I do now? I decided to leave the rest to the lawyer and stood up to leave. Jessica, money isn't something you steal from others. It's something you earn through effort. After that, the divorce went through smoothly. I sent all of Mike's belongings back to his parents. His parents kept apologizing to me and even sent a letter of apology. Jessica was interrogated by the police for illegal entry and theft. My police report led to an investigation, and Jessica was arrested after admitting her guilt. Half of the stolen items had been sold, but I got the rest back. Despite the maliciousness of her actions, her show of remorse and intent to compensate suggested she might receive a suspended sentence. However, Jessica had other crimes. It was revealed that she had been stealing from men she met on a dating app. This meant she would likely face a prison sentence. No wonder she reacted so strongly to the mention of police and crime. Mike couldn't live in Jessica's apartment and moved to an old apartment on the outskirts of town. He's looking for a job, but his unexplained absences and poor attitude at his last job make it hard for him to get hired. He's getting by with day labor for now. I receive regular updates on their situations from the lawyer. After the divorce, I threw myself into work. Now, I'm expanding our company's jewelry line to Europe. The idea came after a trip to Europe I took as a break after the divorce. I had the chance to drink wine with the owner of a jewelry store in France. During that time, I spoke fervently to the owner about jewelry designs. At that time, the owner and I hit it off, and he agreed to showcase my company's jewelry in his store. The owner is a wonderful man who, perhaps because of his own divorce history, understands my heartache. To be honest, I'm focusing on sales in France to see him. It might be mixing business with pleasure, but I think I've earned this perk after all I've been through. That's how hard it was for me. Why did you even come back? There's no place for a good-for-nothing like you here. That's right. Surely you're not just satisfied with paying rent? Even after finally returning to my family home, I was greeted with these words. I have been paying for 22 years since becoming a working adult. I mean, I was thinking of everyone's best interest. Huh? What are you talking about? The one who spoke from behind was my sister. However, my sister and I are not related by blood. She is my father's child from a previous marriage. I left home at the same time my mother remarried. Paying is a given. What else are you good for? That's exactly right. As the elder daughter, it's your duty. I can't understand why my family has to say such things to me. My mother wasn't always like this. She became poisoned by my father after remarrying. I regret that I couldn't stop it. If you hate paying, then just stop. I saw this as an opportunity. Then I'll do just that. Is that okay? You won't be able to. It's not good to make assumptions like that. Huh? I don't get what you mean. I don't want to see your ugly face, so just leave. I got the confirmation I needed, and I didn't need to hold back anymore. I had reached my limit with how much I had been treated. I vowed to disown such a family. I left my family home and stopped paying the rent. And then, a month later. What have you done? I received an unbelievable number of angry calls. I had been carrying them on my back until now. Now, they'll experience 22 years of hell. My name is Irene. I started working right after high school and it's been 4 years. I wanted to leave my house as soon as possible. It all started in the summer of my 3rd year of high school. Irene, I'm thinking of getting remarried. Remarried? Life is tough as it is. Plus, you're planning to go to college, right? True, but if it's like this, I'll work after graduation. But I've already decided. I couldn't find any more words to say after this sudden announcement. Since my father passed away when I was in elementary school, it had just been my mother and me getting by. I couldn't accept the idea of suddenly having a new family. But contrary to my wishes, things moved quickly, and she remarried a few months later. Please take care of us. And this is my daughter Vivian. Daughter? Oh, I didn't tell you. She's going to be your sister. She's only 4 years old, but I hope you two get along. Okay. Everything was so sudden, I was confused. Not only had she remarried, but I also had a new sister. But this sister turned out to be quite troublesome. I tried to get along, initiating conversations, but I got no response, or she blatantly ignored me. Maybe she's still nervous. I kept trying, but it was no use. To make matters worse, my mom doted on this new sister, and she clung to mom. I felt like I was the odd one out. Then, an incident that would change my life happened. What are you gonna do in the future, Irene? After high school, I plan to get a job and move out. What are you talking about? I was startled by his sudden outburst. Life isn't that easy. You should at least go to college. I thought to myself, he's so annoying. Apparently, my thoughts showed on my face. My dad stood up and slapped me across the face. What are you doing? You're still a child. You should just listen to your parents. Thankfully, Mom intervened, but Dad didn't stop. Hey, isn't that a bit too much? You have a problem with that? No, of course not. But Irene, you should apologize. I don't think I have anything to apologize for. What? I desperately searched for a job to leave the house. Although it was a small company, I managed to get a job as an office worker at a publishing company. Right after graduation, I left home. I thought I'd be free, but it wasn't that simple. A year here already? Time flies. Yes, I'm grateful for the opportunity. Don't mention it. We're really glad to have you. That's good to hear. I was getting the hang of my job, and every day was fulfilling. Above all, I was glad to be free from my family. Mom would occasionally contact me. At first, I replied regularly, but then I thought there was no need to involve myself anymore, so I stopped replying. That's when it happened. Somebody claiming to be your family called here earlier, Irene. Oh? Did they say what they wanted? Just that you should call back immediately. Got it, thanks. I had a bad feeling. I hadn't told my family where I worked. And the fact that they called the office directly was unbelievable. I hurriedly contacted Mom. You called my office? Oh, that was your dad. He's just worried. Her response felt somewhat cold. So, what's up? You should ask him yourself. Then Dad took the phone. It's been a while, Irene. Are you doing okay? Why did you call my office? And how did you find out? Well, I have my ways. It's easy for me to find out. And why did you call? From now on, pay us rent every month. Huh? Why should I do that? You left home on your own accord. Isn't it natural to do this? I couldn't understand. Why should I have to pay? I had no such obligation. Sorry, but that's not possible. You can't say no to us. We know your company's number. You know what I mean, right? It was a threat. If I paid quietly, they wouldn't bother me. I hated to comply with my father's demands, but I couldn't let my company suffer. I bit my lip and accepted his demand. Fine, but don't do anything to the company, okay? Sure, as long as you pay up. After hanging up, I collapsed right there. I wanted to escape my family, but how much more did they plan to make me suffer? And so, I began paying $1,800 every month. It wasn't an impossible amount, but it meant cutting back on my lifestyle to make the payments. Then, I got a call from Mom. Make sure you pay every month. Don't forget, or there'll be consequences. I get it. Don't take that tone with me. Mom had changed. She was completely under my father's thumb, nothing like the kind mother she used to be. The only pleasure I had was sitting in the park nearby, staring blankly at the sky. It was free. And made me feel liberated from my daily stress. Maybe I should head back now. Then, one day, a man approached me. Sorry to disturb you. I've seen you here often. Oh, well. I find peace here. I understand. I often come here myself when I have bad days at work. That's nice. That was how I met my husband Dan. We didn't plan to meet, but whenever we did, we had nice chats. Eventually, we started dating. As our relationship progressed, marriage became a topic, but it was hard for me with my current situation. I couldn't tell him about the rent I was paying to my parents. Years went by, and when I turned 30, he proposed. Will you marry me? I'd love to, but I know you're carrying a burden. You don't have to talk about it now. Whenever you're ready. Thank you. And so, we got married. Turns out, Dan also didn't get along well with his family. In a way, we were similar. Therefore, we didn't bother with formal family introductions. Here we are. This is our home. This place? Yeah. I was speechless. I never imagined living in such a wonderful house. What do you do for a living? I asked. Oh, did I not mention? I run a company. I had no idea. My bad. I realized I had married an incredible person. Despite my worries about whether we could make it work, Dan didn't seem to care. He fully supported what I wanted to do. Since then, life has been happy. The only concern was the monthly payments I still made. I knew I had to tell him someday, but I kept missing the right moment. Your phone's ringing. Oh, yeah. When I answered, it was an unexpected person. By this time, I was already 40 years old. It's been a while. Remember me? Vivian, right? Correct. Vivian had grown up. She was now 25. What's up? Well, just checking if you're still alive. You're pretty old now, right? If that's all, I'm hanging up. Come on, we're sisters. Let's talk a bit more. I hadn't been back to my parents' house since then. It made sense she turned out this way, being raised by parents like ours. About the monthly payments. Starting next month, make it $2,400, okay? Huh? Why should it increase? You don't have a choice. Are you living in that house too? Yeah, but that's not important. Just make sure to pay, okay? The call ended. I never thought a decades-later conversation would go like this. The only connection I had with that family was the monthly rent payments. What kind of family was that? You okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Let me know if something's up, okay? Thanks. I was reaching my limit hiding my family situation from my husband. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to talk to him, but I was afraid he'd lose patience with me. I knew it was selfish, especially after keeping it a secret for so long. Time passed without finding a solution. Let's go out for your birthday. It's been a while. Okay, but where are we going? It's a surprise. On my 41st birthday, we had a date. We visited my favorite aquarium, had a great meal, and truly enjoyed the day. Can we stay a bit longer? There's somewhere I want to go. Sure, where? He led me to the park. This was where we first met. This place. Yeah. I wanted to visit here again. I understood why he brought me here. Dan never pressured me to share my troubles. I appreciated his thoughtfulness, but it also pained me. I couldn't keep being manipulated by my awful family. I need to tell you something. Okay. I'm listening. That's how I finally shared the truth with my husband, something I hadn't even told him before. So, you've been enduring all this. My husband didn't blame me but hugged me gently. I'm sorry for keeping quiet until now. There's nothing to apologize for. I was only grateful to have a husband who accepted me as I am. Then, he continued. Of course, you're planning some payback, right? He asked with a smile. I'd like to, but I don't know how. First, we need to stop those payments. But just stopping them wouldn't be fun, would it? I was a bit taken aback by his attitude, but soon felt determined to get back at them. Then, maybe we should confront them at their home? Oh, a direct confrontation. Just stopping the payments would be boring, and you like this kind of thing, right? Well, yeah. We went home and started planning our next move. I think it was the first time I saw my husband so excited. By the way, about your dad. He asked about my father's job. I had explained about my family earlier at the park. He seemed to have something in mind. I shared everything I knew about my father with him. I see. So that's how it is. Did you figure something out? Yeah, a little. I'll do what I can on my end. Okay. I'll leave it to you. Sure. So, I decided to visit my parents' house during the next holiday. Of course, my husband would come with me. Having him by my side was a huge comfort. There were about 6 months until the day we would go to my parents' house. In the meantime, my family's demands grew more outrageous. First to act was my mother. Could you help me out? I need you to increase the rent payment from next month. Huh? Vivian already told me to increase it. Why again? We have our reasons. Reasons? Like I said before, your reasons don't concern me. If you're my daughter, you should naturally help. I couldn't help but sigh. I hardly had any feelings left for my mother at this point. I might be your daughter, but I'm not his child. What are you saying? Since you remarried, I've never accepted that man as my father. How could you say that? Seems like you don't get it. Don't you realize you're just following his orders? So that's what you think. Fine, I get it. She hung up without listening to the rest of what I had to say. I once hoped she would return to the mother she used to be, but now it seemed impossible. So, I thought there was no need to hold back. Exhausted, I sat on the sofa, staring at the ceiling when my phone rang again. I guessed it was probably my father, informed by my mother. Hello? Do you even understand your place? Didn't I never have a place to begin with? Always with a comeback. You're such an infuriating daughter. I'll take that as a compliment. Is that so? It seems you won't understand until you've been hurt. Try it. But remember, if you do, the monthly payments will stop. His speechlessness was palpable even through the phone. No matter how tough he acted, it was all about the money. Without it, he would be the one struggling. It took me an unfathomable amount of time to realize this. In the end, the reason he called as soon as I started working was just a facade. Just you wait. I'll make sure you regret this. I'll be looking forward to it. Eventually, I had no idea why my father had even called. He had initiated the call but ended it as if he was fleeing. Was that your father again? Yeah, as idle as ever. Guess so. Huh? Nothing, just thinking he must be really desperate. Both the call from Mom and now this. They seem to be struggling without me knowing. Personally, I'd prefer they suffer a bit more. Well, we're going to see them soon, so you'll probably find out a lot. That might be true. The holiday season has arrived. My husband was ready to act if needed, waiting in the car. I kept my phone on call, just in case. I nervously opened the front door. There was my sister, Vivian, right in front of me. Is that really you coming back? I'm home. What brings you here? Can't I come back without a reason? Well, I guess it's okay. Vivian said that and went back to her room. I headed to the living room. As soon as my father saw me, he started on me. Why did you even come back? There's no place for a good-for-nothing like you here. That's right. Surely you're not just satisfied with paying rent? Even after finally returning to my family home, I was greeted with these words. I have been paying for 22 years since becoming a working adult. I mean, I was thinking of everyone's best interest. When with my husband, I felt confident, but now, faced with their criticism, I shrank back. It weighed heavily on my heart. Huh? What are you talking about? My sister spoke from behind me. I turned around to see her, arms crossed, glaring at me. Paying is a long-standing obligation of the elder daughter. What else are you good for? That's exactly right. As the elder daughter, it's your duty. Duty? Yeah. You practically ran away from home. I thought I saw a hint of sadness in my mother's face. So, what brings you here? This isn't your place anymore. I clenched my fists. It's about the monthly rent payments. I see. You don't want to pay anymore. Yes, that's right. I won't be controlled by you anymore. Can you really do that? Remember what I said. If you stop paying, you'll trouble your company. Until now, maybe. Fine, if you hate paying so much, stop then. I saw my chance. Then I will. You're okay with that? You won't be able to. It's not good to make assumptions like that. Huh? I don't get what you mean. I don't want to see your ugly face, so just leave. I had his word, and there was no need for restraint anymore. I had reached my limit with what I could endure. I vowed to cut ties with such a family. As I was about to leave the house, my father stopped me. Do you understand the consequences? Your threats won't change my mind. A failure like you should just do as your parents say. That'll be your life from now on. I refused to acknowledge such a man as my father. Nothing he said could change my resolve. You and people like you are the ones I refuse to deal with. Then, in a fit of rage, he lunged at me. Hey! What are you doing? You need to be taught a lesson again. It hurts. He was still strong. Despite his age. I feared he might hit me like he used to. That's when it happened. The front door burst open. Who's there? Nice to meet you. I'm Irene's husband. What? You're married? Yes, I've been married for quite some time. How dare you? I'm not a child anymore. I can make my own decisions about marriage. Then, hearing the commotion, my mother and sister, Vivian, came in. What's going on? Who is this man? He's my husband. What? I didn't feel the need to introduce him to you. That's all there is to it. Can we leave now? I don't want to be here a second longer. Wait a minute. I won't wait. My husband stepped in to help. If this continues, we'll have to call the police. What? Mind your own business, outsider. It seems talking won't work. Let's go. Right. So, my husband and I left my parents' house. I'll never forget their expressions at that moment. A mix of surprise and anger. Good timing, huh? Yeah. Who knows what would have happened otherwise? But what matters is what happens next. Yes. It's time for those three to experience hell. As we drove home, we talked about stopping the rent payments. And a month later, what have you done? An unbelievable number of angry calls came. I had always supported them until now. I just did what you told me to do. What? But it's no problem, right? You and Dad both work. Then Vivian, lacking her earlier bravado, spoke softly. Dad got fired. Fired? I don't know much, but someone from headquarters came, and... That's when I remembered a conversation with my husband. He had shown interest in my father's company and said he'd handle it. He must have done something. But you're there, right? I don't work. Could you repeat that? I'm not working. You were so bold despite not working? My sister fell silent. You really are foolish, all of you. Well, you brought this upon yourselves. Now, you'll have to figure it out as a family. We can't even live like this. Is that my problem? You're older than me, it's your responsibility. I'm done with this conversation. I hung up immediately. I hadn't felt so refreshed in a long time. Turning my back on such a family was the right decision. Sometimes I regret not acting sooner, but I guess it was fate that it turned out this way. Later, I also got a call from my father. I never thought you'd actually stop the payments. Help us out. What? Now you're asking for help? I'm not going to. You handle it yourself. Wait. No, I'm hanging up. Hey! The conversation isn't over. It is for me. After that, I ignored numerous calls from my family. Are you okay? Absolutely fine. Good to hear. About Dad getting fired. That was... You figured it out, huh? Yes, you're right. Turns out his company was a subcontractor for mine. I knew it. Apparently, he was causing a lot of issues at work, like harassment. So, I took care of it. And he was fired. My husband had helped make it easier for me to take my revenge. He really is a kind and supportive man. From now on, just think about yourself. Yes. I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much. I couldn't be more grateful to my husband. I thought we could finally lead a peaceful life. But that hideous family didn't give up until the very end. Somehow they found out where we lived and showed up at our house. Why are you here? How did you find out? We asked someone we know. So, you investigated my workplace too? Please forgive us. Look, Vivian too is begging. Please. They were begging with their heads bowed. Of course, I couldn't forgive them. Stop it, it's embarrassing. Just go back. We can't live like this. You brought this on yourselves. It's your fault for causing trouble at work. How did you know? Your company was a subcontractor for my husband's. What a coincidence. Karma, right? That's ridiculous. My father collapsed in despair. Now you understand. It's pointless to come here. Should I call the police? Then, my mother and Vivian, looking dejected, took my father and left. Later, I heard from my husband about their situation. Predictably, they couldn't afford rent and moved into a small, run-down apartment. Their family relationship was the worst, always fighting. Well, that's a natural consequence. I don't care what happens to them in the future. I only wish they live regretting for the rest of their lives. How did you feel about what you heard? Quite satisfying. We're living fulfilling days. From now on, I'll focus on my life with my husband. My name is Erica Johnson. I married my husband, who is 10 years older than me, 2 years ago, and we've been living together with our stepchildren, making a family of 4. My daughter, who is 4 years old, and my husband's stepson, a 15-year-old middle schooler. The stepson, named Michael, is a troubled teen and has started to bully my daughter, Emily. One day, out of the blue, Michael punched Emily in the stomach, making her cry. When I rushed over after hearing Emily's cries, I found Michael taking photos, seemingly amused by the situation. What are you doing? Well, her face is just so funny. I barely hit her, and she's crying like a baby. What a crybaby. When I asked Emily, it seemed Michael had punched her in the stomach without any warning. He didn't hold back and seemed to have hit her with quite a bit of force. Emily was in a lot of pain, holding her stomach. She's only 4 years old. How can you be so cruel? Don't you think about how others feel? I couldn't stay silent after seeing my daughter hurt like this. So I scolded him sternly. But then, Michael turned his anger towards me. Shut up. You're not even my real mom, stop acting all high and mighty. With that, he shoved me away. Michael tends to lash out physically when something upsets him. Even towards me, a woman. I could tolerate it if it were just me, but I can't forgive him hurting Emily. Since talking to Michael didn't work, I decided to discuss this with my husband. When my husband got home and I brought up Michael's behavior, he looked visibly upset. Complaining about Michael again? You always favor your own daughter. It's because of your attitude that Michael acts out. I understand that no parent likes to hear their child criticized. But in this situation, Michael was clearly in the wrong. I pleaded with my husband to talk to Michael, as nothing I said seemed to matter. But my husband just seemed annoyed. Why do I have to lecture him? I'm tired from work. Michael hit a 4-year-old girl. Isn't it normal to scold him for that? Maybe Michael had his reasons for hitting her. It's not fair to blame only him. What reason could there be? He was taking pictures of Emily crying, for fun. That's crossing a line. And for Michael's future, he needs to be disciplined now, or he might end up in real trouble. Stop nagging. It's Emily's fault for provoking Michael. I get that you love your own daughter more, but blaming Michael is wrong. It's actually my husband who always favors his own child. Whenever something comes up, my husband always prioritizes Michael. Even when we talk about going out to eat, he never listens to Emily's opinion and only cares about what Michael wants. It seems like Emily has her grievances, but she always keeps them to herself. I guess she's scared of getting scolded by my husband and Michael if she speaks up. The image of Emily's sad face comes to my mind, and I feel my emotions rising. If we're going to keep living together, you need to discipline Michael properly. You say I only dote on my daughter, but isn't that what you're doing? Emily is always being forced to hold back. I wish you'd think about her a bit more. What? What did you just say? I could see that my words had made my husband even angrier. While we were arguing, Emily came over. Probably worried about what was happening. What's going on? Mom, are you guys fighting? I'm sorry for scaring you. Damn, what an annoying kid. I can see why Michael wants to hit her. What? What are you saying in front of Emily? Well, it's true, isn't it? She always starts crying over nothing and never warms up to us. That's because you've never opened your heart to Emily. Man, I shouldn't have married a divorced woman with a kid. I felt something break inside me at my husband's words. I just can't go on with this person anymore. That's what I was certain of. Leave right now. What? I'm fed up with you guys. Let's just get a divorce. Don't get mad. It's her fault she gets hit. You always take your daughter's side. Try being a good kid for once. My husband said this to Emily. She looked like she was about to cry. I had reached my limit. We're getting a divorce. This is the end for us. What? Are you serious? Yes, I am. You think you can divorce me? You can't live without my income. I'm serious. I can't do this with you guys anymore. Fine by me. Just seeing your faces irritates me. It'll be a relief to get divorced. Saying that, my husband left, laughing loudly. He showed no sense of crisis. Later, I signed the divorce papers I had prepared earlier and submitted them to the court. These papers were actually prepared by my husband. Whenever he was unhappy with something, he would threaten divorce. If you're gonna keep complaining, I'll just divorce you. I only asked you to discipline Michael. Why does it have to come to divorce? It's because you keep making Michael out to be the bad guy. I was just saying it's not good for Michael's upbringing to keep going like this. He's out at night, causing trouble at school. That's why you're so annoying. Sign here, and I'll submit it to the court. This was how my husband had threatened me, showing me the filled-out divorce papers. I think I lost any love for my husband about a year after we got married. But I stayed because I wasn't ready to leave yet. I didn't just file for divorce. I also filed a report for the harm done to Emily. When I talked to Emily, it turned out that she had been hit by Michael many times when I wasn't around. Emily had been threatened by Michael that he'd hurt her badly if she told me, so she never reported it. There were also several injuries on her body caused by Michael. Additionally, Emily had the habit of keeping a daily diary. She had meticulously recorded the instances when Michael hit her. I submitted this diary to the police. That evening, my husband and Michael, unaware of everything, came home as usual. They expected, as if it were the most normal thing, that I would prepare dinner for them. Hey, haven't you prepared dinner yet? I'm tired from work, you know? Yeah, hurry up and get it ready. You're such a useless mom. As usual, the two of them vented their dissatisfaction at me. Before, I would have reluctantly started cooking for them, but not anymore. Hey, you don't belong here anymore, okay? We're strangers now, so could you please not just walk in like you own the place? What are you talking about? This is our home too. Just get the dinner ready already. Look, I told you I'm divorcing you, remember? Or did you forget? Then my husband began to laugh mockingly, with Michael joining in. What's so funny? That's probably just a bluff, right? You, a stay-at-home mom, divorcing me? How would you even live without me? You can't manage a decent life without me. Really, you and your daughter are just leeches on Dad. It's sad that he had to support people who aren't even his own family. They clearly didn't understand their situation at all. I decided it was time to inform them of the reality. I submitted the divorce papers today. So we're strangers now. You funny. My husband was reluctant to believe, which only increased my irritation. But I responded calmly, without getting emotional. Do you think I'm joking about this? If you think it's a lie, go check with the office. We're strangers now. Hey, are you serious? I've been saying that. It seemed he finally believed me. His face, which had looked so smug before, suddenly paled. But how are you going to live as a stay-at-home mom? You're not expecting me to raise 2 kids on my own, are you? Of course, I'll take care of Emily. I have no intention of relying on you in the future, so don't worry. What? You have no income. How will you survive? Are you and your daughter going to be homeless? Don't worry about money. I have a job now that pays as much as a company employee. What? What are you talking about? You don't work, do you? No, I do. Actually, I've been working from home. I've been saving up, just in case something like this happened. Hearing that I had been working, my husband was visibly shocked. I started working from home as a web designer about a year ago. With nearly a decade of experience in a web production company, I had the necessary skills. At first, my earnings were just pocket money, but after landing a big project, I now earn as much as my husband. I had quit my job a few months after we got married. At his insistence. He never imagined I could earn this much. He was speechless for a moment. So you've been secretly working behind my back? I had to protect Emily. Plus, I didn't want to depend on you for the rest of my life. What? It's like you were planning to divorce me from the start. When I first met you, I thought your assertive personality was manly and good. But after marrying, I realized it was different. You're always selfish, and you raise your voice whenever something doesn't go your way. I guess Michael picked up that trait from you. What? My husband was clearly displeased, but I didn't care and continued. I used to be concerned about his mood, but not anymore. Then I turned to Michael. What do you want? I've reported to the police what you did to Emily. The report has been accepted, so please make sure to pay for your actions. Police! Michael was clearly shaken by the mention of the police. Even he was afraid of them. You really filed a report? He asked in a trembling voice. I nodded firmly in response. But I only punched her in the stomach, right? That can't be enough to involve the police. Everything you've done to Emily has been revealed. She's been keeping a diary of everything that's happened. Plus, there are marks on her body that you caused. She's told me everything. Then Michael looked down and clicked his tongue. Emily isn't here. I didn't want her involved in our conversation, so I left her with my parents. Damn her! Telling unnecessary things. It seems you threatened her, saying if she told me, you'd hurt me too. She didn't want me to get hurt, so she kept quiet. Unlike you, Emily is a considerate child. I may have been harsh, but I spoke my mind. Then Michael looked at me with pleading eyes. Please, anything but the police. I don't know what they'll say at school if this gets out. No, I will not forgive you. Why not? I'm part of your family, aren't I? What are you saying now? Sorry, but I don't think of you as my son. And I'm divorcing this man anyway. From now on, we're nothing to each other. Saying this, I coldly dismissed Michael. Then Michael looked down and began to cry softly. Ignoring him, I continued speaking to my husband. So, as promised, please leave this house. You don't belong here anymore. What are you talking about? This house is mine. You're the ones who should leave. I couldn't help but laugh at my husband's words. Apparently, he had forgotten something important. What's so funny? You're mistaken thinking this house is yours. What? This house is definitely mine. Don't be ridiculous. This house is in my name, remember? What? My husband's mouth fell open in shock. He went silent for a while, his face turning pale as he remembered. You might have left the contract to me, but we agreed to change it to your name later, right? We talked about it, but you said you didn't want to deal with the paperwork and told me to leave it in my name. Forgot that too? So this house is still in your name? Yes, I've been saying that. I've been paying most of the rent anyway. You can't complain if I keep it, right? My husband fell silent. We've been living in an apartment with a rent of about $4,000. For about half a year after we got married, my husband paid it, but then he stopped contributing much to our living expenses, and I had to pay. I wasn't working at the time, so I had to dip into my savings to get by. I asked him to contribute to the living expenses, but he refused. And even got angry and lashed out at things, so I couldn't press him further. Realizing the house wasn't his, my husband began to show obvious signs of distress.
So if the house is in your name, we're the ones who have to leave, right?
That's right. I've been paying most of the rent, after all.
So, what if we don't get divorced, then?
What? He had been the one to push the divorce papers at me, and now he was changing his tune. I was appalled at my husband's sudden shift in attitude. It seemed there was a reason he didn't want the divorce.
Please! I can't afford to divorce you right now.
Why? Weren't you the one who said you were ready to dump me anytime?
Yeah, but I'm in trouble now.
What do you mean?
Actually, I don't have much money right now.
My husband murmured this. Then he began to reveal something he had never told me before.
I didn't tell you, but about 6 months after we got married, my salary was cut. Now, it's only about 2/3 of what it was when we first got married.
Why did your salary get cut? He turned away, seeming to find it hard to answer. From his reaction, it seemed like he had caused some kind of problem. My guess was right. Apparently, he made a mistake at work that was bad enough to get him fired, and his salary was cut as a result. He somehow managed to avoid being fired after convincing the company. Even with a 2/3 salary, he was still earning more than most people his age. But the reason he had no money was that he was pouring his earnings into gambling. He used gambling to relieve stress from work. There were times he won, but more often he lost, and his savings were nearly depleted. That must have been why he stopped contributing to the household. He had no money left due to gambling. Now it all made sense. I understand that you don't have money, but I still have no intention of staying with you. I've already submitted the divorce papers.
We can just submit the marriage papers again, right?
What's the point for me to stay with you? I'd get nothing but a violent stepson who hurts my daughter.
Hey, stop saying bad things about Michael. He's hurting too.
Michael was sitting nearby, crying. Seeing him like that didn't affect me. Emily had suffered much more than him. It might sound harsh, but I wish Michael would suffer a lot more. You always take your son's side.
Well, yeah, Michael is my real son.
Then it's only fair for me to side with my real daughter, right? To protect Emily, I'll cut ties with you. Please, never bother us again. I spoke firmly, but my husband seemed unable to accept it. Then he started saying this.
Did you tell our parents about the divorce? I bet my dad and mom won't agree.
My parents agree with the decision, and I've already informed your parents. They even apologized on your behalf.
No way!
He couldn't believe it. But it was true. I had already informed my in-laws. Fortunately, they are reasonable people. When I told them about the situation at home, they deeply apologized. They said they had no right to oppose our divorce and agreed with it. However, my husband still didn't want to believe it.
There's no way my parents would agree. They were so happy about our marriage.
Why don't you check with them then? He seemed unsure about it. And hesitated. So, we're divorcing, right? There's a matter of packing your things. I'll give you a week, so please leave soon.
Wait. Let me confirm with my parents first. I can't accept this.
Suit yourself. Then he started calling his parents. My mother-in-law answered the phone. And was cold towards him. I could hear her voice too.
You really agreed to our divorce?
Yes, we did. Continuing this marriage would only make Erica and Emily suffer. In fact, we were the ones who suggested the divorce.
No way! They were so happy about our marriage.
Sure, we were happy then. But who knew you would turn out to be such a terrible husband, neglecting to contribute to the household and constantly complaining to Erica? And you never reprimanded Michael for hurting Emily.
But Emily's not my real daughter.
You married Erica, right? Then you should have treated her precious daughter Emily equally. But I guess whatever I say now won't make a difference to you. My mother-in-law is usually a calm and kind person. She had always been like that towards my husband too. He must not have expected such a cold response from her. He was visibly shaken.
I hope you understand, but your father and I intend to cut ties with you. We have no desire to associate with Michael, who hurt Emily, so please don't come back here again. Are you serious? Do you think I would joke about something like this? You have no right to stop the divorce, so to avoid any more trouble, please leave quickly. That's all I have to say. Goodbye. With that, my mother-in-law unilaterally ended the call. After that, my still unsatisfied husband tried to call my in-laws several times, but they ignored him. It seemed they had even blocked his number on their cell phones. My husband, now abandoned by his own parents, slumped down, seemingly out of his senses. Then, Michael began to speak. His eyes were red and swollen with tears. Please, don't tell the police. I was having a hard time at school and I took it out on Emily. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't help myself. Michael, tearfully, began to explain his feelings. The reason he had been harassing Emily was due to stress at school. Despite his flashy appearance and behaving like a delinquent, it seemed Michael was completely ignored by his schoolmates. He was supposedly part of a certain delinquent group, but even they didn't really consider him a friend and just used him. Michael was lonely, having no real friends and always feeling isolated. He told me all this while crying. But that doesn't change the fact that you hurt Emily, does it? Just because you were hurt doesn't mean you can hurt others, right? Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him easily. Michael probably thought he would be forgiven if he told the truth. His eyes filled with even more tears. I'm really sorry. I won't ever hurt Emily again. If this gets out at school, I'll lose whatever place I have left. I can't bear to be hurt anymore. So it's only you who shouldn't be hurt? It's okay to do whatever you want to others? Of course, I'm sorry, but please, not the police. I'm sorry, but I will never forgive you. The police are already on their way, so be prepared for questioning. No, no. Michael collapsed to the ground, crying loudly. Then, my husband spoke up again. Please, spare him from the police. He didn't mean any harm. So if there's no ill intent, it's okay to punch a small child? To scratch with your nails? To pull hair? No, I didn't mean that. My husband was overwhelmed by my assertiveness. I used to be someone who just followed what he said. But not anymore. At that time, I was more assertive than I had ever been before. From now on, please never show your face in front of us again. If you try to contact us, I'll immediately call the police. Do you really hate me that much? My husband asked in a trembling voice. His eyes were also red. I despise you. Just looking at your face fills me with revulsion. I told him this clearly, and he began to cry. What did I do wrong? Not knowing the reason is exactly why it's over. You two just go on and live your lives. Emily and I will be happy together. My husband, who had always been overbearing to me, seemed truly shocked by the word hate. As we were having this conversation, the police arrived at the house. It seemed they came for an investigation. Then, we underwent questioning by the police. Michael was just crying and couldn't really talk, so I spoke on his behalf and told them everything. Of course, I proceeded with the divorce. I demanded compensation from Michael for injuring Emily. Naturally, Michael had no money to pay, so my ex-husband ended up bearing the cost. The compensation forced my ex-husband into debt. Even so, his gambling habit didn't change and his debts snowballed. Eventually, debt collectors came to his workplace, and he decided to quit his job. He then started working part-time, barely scraping by. As for Michael, the fact that he had hurt Emily spread around the school, and he became even more isolated. Unable to attend school, he began living a reclusive life at home. With no friends, Michael must be leading a lonely existence. Of course, I feel no sympathy for them. In fact, I feel relieved that they are getting their just desserts. On the other hand, I moved out of the apartment with Emily to a different place. I didn't want to continue living in a place filled with memories of them. Since Emily and I started living alone, she has been showing more smiles. Seeing Emily happy gives me peace of mind. I intend to continue protecting my precious daughter. First off, your money is just pocket change to me. Acting all high and mighty over a mere $2,000 monthly rent. Go ahead, stop paying. They both looked at me triumphantly. With pleasure. John and Alex must have thought I'd come crying and apologizing to them. They were surprised by my response. Fine by me. I'm dead serious about stopping the payments. With that, I left the house. And that's how I cut ties with John, Alex, and the family. My name is Eleanor. I'm a 47-year-old. I married John 18 years ago. I met him on the dating site. I'm plain-looking, short, and was nicknamed Sunfish as a kid. I was always teased by everyone growing up. Because of that, I never had much self-confidence. For me, with low self-esteem, marriage was a distant dream. John always looked down on me from the start. He never treated me to a meal, not even once. We often split the bill, and I often paid. Moreover, John was divorced with one child. Since it was my first marriage, my parents were strongly against it. But I never had the slightest intention of breaking up with John. It happened one day. While on a date, John proposed to me. You know, I think marrying you wouldn't be so bad. His condescending way of saying it shocked and honestly hurt me. I often daydreamed about the ideal words and scenario for a proposal. I wished for kinder words when being proposed to for marriage. Additionally, John's 14-year-old son, Alex, never warmed up to me. I dismissed it as typical teenage behavior, but he's never looked me in the eye while speaking, even to this day. But none of that bothered me. I truly believe this marriage proposal was my last chance. Marriage was my dream. Approaching 30, I was indeed feeling desperate. I thought if I let this chance slip, I'd never marry again. So, I went against my parents' wishes and married him. In hindsight, my parents were right. If I had followed my parents' advice, I think I could have avoided this nightmarish situation. Looking back, this was the entrance to hell. The hell started from the first day of marriage. I don't mind if you keep your job, John had told me when we decided to marry. I thought he was understanding, but I was wrong. On the first day of marriage, John said something shocking. You'll pay the rent here. What? I didn't understand what John was saying at first. So, you're gonna pay the rent. That's what you work for, isn't it? From John's tone, I could feel there was no love for me. He seemed to view me not as his wife, but as a source of money. I had thought John's reluctance to treat me to meals was because he was frugal and sensible, but maybe I was wrong. Perhaps he just wanted to be lazy. John always looked down on women, not just me. His failure in marriage was also due to Alex. He often said, just because you're a woman. Or, since you're a woman. Whenever John watched TV and saw a drama featuring a successful woman, he always badmouthed them. Being a woman and daring to be a doctor. I would never want to be a patient of yours if I were in need. John's complaints were usually when he had been drinking. And he never had the courage to say these things directly to someone's face, so he'd either mutter them to the TV or under his breath. Hearing this always made me feel terrible and lose my appetite. John was not just stingy, he was all for getting anything free. At local festivals, if they offered free local vegetables to early arrivals, he'd always send me to line up. He'd show up just in time to collect vegetables for both of us. He would sign up for every sample and free trial. And it was always my job to turn down the follow-up sales pitches and persuasions. John also loved to make complaints. If there was even a slight issue with a purchased product, he'd definitely complain. His complaints were not loud or aggressive, but persistent and time-consuming. John once made a complaint at a supermarket and spent hours grumbling, even causing a female part-time worker to cry. Since that incident, I haven't shopped at that supermarket. I'm too embarrassed to show my face. John's complaining wasn't limited to outside, he did it at home too. He was meticulous, always nitpicking. This laundry, the collar's still dirty. John points out stains on shirts he's been wearing for years, stains that just won't come out. I take the shirt without talking back. If I did, I'd be in for a long lecture. He also nitpicks about other things: dirt in the corner of the entrance, water spots on the windows, damp hand towels. Dealing with John's complaints, my day just ends. John is not just a complainer, he's also harsh with people. He treats me like I'm some sort of servant. Since we got married, any kindness John had towards me has vanished. While dating, there was little kindness, but he showed some concern for me. Now, he has no hesitation in his demands. Even in the middle of the night, he'd send me out to buy liquor, or if he ran out of snacks, he'd order me to make more. He doesn't care if I'm asleep in the bedroom. Even after midnight, he'd come to the bedroom and kick my thigh. "Hey, I'm out of booze. Go to the liquor store and get me some beer." And when I go, he'd then demand, "Make some snacks." So, I often go to work sleep-deprived. John drinks heavily. Because of that, he often calls in sick to work, hungover. When he drinks till he passes out, he won't get up the next morning. Even on weekdays, he's sometimes passed out. On those days, it's my job to call his office and say, he's sick and won't make it in. Once, when I forgot to call, John berated me. "Typical of you, not taking care of your husband when he's sick and just making things worse. If you're useless, at least don't cause trouble." He drinks heavily and then can't get up because of the hangover. His hangovers are all his own doing. But he acts like it's my fault. When John's sleeping off a hangover, I try to be as quiet as possible. Once, when I used the vacuum cleaner, he got so angry, he lectured me for 2 hours. Now, when John's home, I use a broom to clean. John usually drinks when he's at home, so I can hardly ever use the vacuum cleaner. John's lectures are long. This is because he repeats the same things over and over. This time, I had to apologize for about 2 hours continually. I was mentally exhausted from John's treatment, and it had become a habit for me to live in a way that wouldn't upset him. John would drink and lead a sluggish life. He cleverly used the company's policies to take time off. I was worried he might have been fired since he hadn't gone to work for so long. But when I expressed my concern, John muttered, "It's paternity leave." I was baffled about how he managed to get paternity leave for a high school-aged son. But I couldn't question it. John was skilled at interpreting the company's systems and policies in a way that suited him. He was self-indulgent, always finding excuses to take time off from work. He never did overtime or worked on weekends. He used up all his paid leave. Yet, he didn't plan family trips or anything. He mostly just lounged around at home, drinking. The most he'd do was go to a bar by himself. John's favorite phrase was, "I married you, didn't I?" Even if I didn't voice my complaints, if I showed dissatisfaction on my face, he'd inevitably say this. John could easily tell when I was unhappy. He was very sensitive about being seen in a bad light. This must be his way of navigating life. Our son Alex has handsome features and is popular among his peers. He brags about being scouted as a model. Like John, Alex is also harsh with me. He refuses to eat food he dislikes. Worse, if such food is on the table, he complains. Alex, too, complains persistently like John. Once, when I handed him socks that were inside out after washing, he complained for a week. Alex attended a public high school and his grades were above average. John didn't like spending money on anyone but himself and wasn't interested in Alex's education. He's going to have to work after he graduates from high school, John had declared. I wanted Alex to go to university when I thought about his future. I thought that without it, Alex might struggle in the future, so I decided to send him to tutoring. Knowing John wouldn't contribute, I decided to pay the tutoring fees from my income. However, this made our financial situation even tighter. John gave me some money for living expenses, but frankly, it wasn't enough. After months of trying to make ends meet, I asked John for more money. This request came after months of trying to make ends meet and realizing it was impossible despite all my efforts to cut back. John snorted and coldly said, If you can't manage with the money I give, you're a failure as a wife. Figure it out. That was the end of the conversation. I could only hang my head. In the end, I decided to pay for the rent, Alex's tuition, and our living expenses from my income and savings. Alex started going to tutoring and preparing for the entrance exams. At first, he wasn't keen, but I persuaded him about the ease of university admission and job prospects. Additionally, I managed the study schedule, printed past exam papers, took care of health management, and frequently communicated with the tutoring teachers. I also helped in deciding on the desired university and supported the study process. The university admission results were checked online. I had a feeling that Alex wouldn't tell me the results. When I saw the results, I was so happy that I just slumped down on the spot. Thus, Alex was able to go to university. From the time Show passed the university entrance exam until now, I haven't received even a single thank you from him. Alex isn't very expressive, so it was hard to tell if he was happy. He was proudly talking on the phone to his friends about being able to go to university. I got into university, man. It was seriously a breeze. I could hear him talking boastfully on the phone with his friends in the living room. He seemed happy, but his way of expressing it was demeaning to others, which unsettled me. When I told John about the university acceptance, the first thing he asked was, "How are you going to manage the money?" John hates spending money on anything other than himself. I told him that I was paying for everything from my savings and salary, and had also applied for a student loan. Hearing that, John seemed convinced and finally said to Alex, "Congratulations on your acceptance." The loan was not a grant but a low-interest one, so I would likely be the one repaying it. In university, Alex, who had been idling away, said he wanted to study abroad. Honestly, I was scared we'd run out of money, but for Alex's sake, I withdrew my fixed deposit to fund it. When I checked Alex's social media during his study abroad, it didn't seem like he was studying at all, more like he was just on a vacation abroad. Around this time, I was talking to my boss about possibly getting a raise. After graduating, Alex got a job at a decent IT company, though not top tier. Incidentally, his study abroad brought no results. He still couldn't speak English. Alex began spending more time away from home, leaving me alone with John more often, making life even more suffocating. Alex introduced me to his fiancée. She seemed like a kind and quiet woman. She reminded me of myself somehow. I had a bad feeling. Could Alex be thinking the same as John? Maybe he's found his next source of income and a candidate for a servant. Then John bluntly said, "Alex and his wife will live here. You have no place here, Eleanor. Sleep in the storage room by the entrance." Hearing that, something in me snapped. Unbelievable. Do they even realize how much I've done for this family? I worked as they told me to, paying for everything from rent to living expenses and education fees. I had a faint hope that they might appreciate or acknowledge me. But all that was in vain. To think that they would say such terrible things to me. Alex and John looked at me in shock. "Do you know why Alex was able to go to college?" Alex, looking awkward, tried to smirk it off. I vented my anger on Alex. "Your father never planned to send you to college. I was the one who paid for it and helped you with your studies to get you there." "I didn't know that," Alex retorted, looking away. "Don't start with that now. When did I ever ask to go to college?" "That's right, nobody asked you to do it, Eleanor. You did it on your own." "How can you say that? You all just see me as a convenient ATM, don't you?" Alex snorted derisively. "Now you bring this up?" He looked down on me. "You're only good for earning money and supporting us, so don't get all high and mighty." He seemed to thoroughly belittle me. "Enough." I couldn't take it anymore and stood up, kicking the chair. John grabbed my shoulder and forced me back into the seat. Then, with a cold tone, he said to me, "Hey Eleanor, how can you talk to Alex like that? Have you gone downhill not just in looks but in character too?" What cruel words. I had endured for 18 years. But I had reached my limit. "Stop it, John, and don't encourage Alex. he's not getting carried away. It's just how it is. You're just that in this house. Shocked and angry, tears welled up in my eyes. Seeing this, John and Alex scornfully said to me, "A woman like you, we never really accepted you as a wife. What are you getting all high and mighty about?" "That's right. Just because you contribute some money doesn't mean you can act all important." I glared at Alex. "If that's how you feel, I won't contribute any more money. Go ahead. I'm fed up with living with you anyway." "Fine, let's cut ties completely. You both have jobs, so you won't have trouble with money." "That's right, we can manage without your money. Besides, I'm getting married. After all, your money is just pocket change. Acting all high and mighty over a mere $2,000 monthly rent. Go ahead, stop paying." They both looked at me triumphantly. With pleasure. John and Alex must have thought I'd come crying and apologizing to them. They were surprised by my response. Fine by me. I'm serious about stopping the payments. Surprise and fear appeared on John's face. John was inherently cowardly and weak-willed. He crumbles when confronted. "Well, it's fine. You're useless to us now anyway." "Understood. I'll happily do that. I'm leaving this house and will have nothing more to do with you." With that, I left the house. That's how I cut ties with John and Alex. 3 months later, John called me. I was reluctant to answer, but I didn't want him to hold anything against me later, so I picked up. "Eleanor? It's me, John," he said, his voice panicked. I briefly put down the phone and took a deep breath. "I'm listening, what is it?" "Please, help me." I had suspected they might start struggling financially, but his panic was extraordinary. "What? Why now? I thought I had cut ties with you all." I tried to stay calm and composed, even though my heart was racing. "Don't say things like that. We're really in a tight spot right now. Can you just pay the rent again, just for now? We're family, after all." We were still legally married, as the divorce proceedings were ongoing. The discussions hadn't made much progress, so I was talking to a lawyer about going for a court divorce. Legally, we were still a couple, but I saw no reason nor had the inclination to help this man. "What are you talking about? Who was it that called my money just pocket change?" "I might have said that, but I'm really in trouble now." John's voice quivered, sounding tearful. However, I knew this was just an act, his way of trying to worm his way back in. He was attempting to ingratiate himself with me again. "I was wrong before, I'm sorry. Please, we're in danger of falling apart as a family." Hearing his words, I could sense that John was indeed in trouble. I responded mockingly. "Oh, right. Alex got fired, didn't he? And now he's spending his nights at the police station." Alex had been caught embezzling company funds and was under police investigation. John seemed shocked. He seemed shocked, at a loss for words. After a moment, John managed to speak. "How did you know about that? More importantly, did you know Alex's company was recently acquired? The company that bought it is where I work." "What?" There was a sound of something dropping. Apparently, John had dropped the phone. John knew about Alex's arrest, but didn't know that my company had acquired his. I was working at a company making AI semiconductor chips, which decided to take over Alex's IT company. During the acquisition process, Alex's embezzlement came to light. Our CEO is strict about ethics and won't tolerate fraud. Immediately, criminal charges were filed, and most of the involved parties were arrested. The reason I started working at this company was when Alex wanted to study abroad. That's when I asked for a raise. The person who listened to me then was my manager. He was talented and had led several developments leading to patents. He told me he was about to start his own company. "I can't fully utilize my abilities if I stay in the current company," he often lamented. This manager invited me to join his new venture. "The salary might be low initially, but we will surely succeed," he said passionately. I believed this person would definitely succeed, so I decided to change jobs without consulting John.
In fact, at that time, I was not only avoiding consulting John, but also avoiding speaking to him altogether. I thought I could manage for a while with my savings and severance pay. Initially, the salary at the new company wasn't much. But as we obtained several AI-related patents, the company's performance soared. The CEO praised me for making operations run smoothly and for aiding in the smooth progress of development. I was often told by the CEO, "Without you, I wouldn't have been able to concentrate on development." Indeed, when the CEO focuses on development, he tends to neglect other aspects like company management and sales. I took on tasks like negotiating with banks and developing new business clients. Since we started as a small company, I had no choice but to do it myself. As development progressed, we expanded the company and hired more people. The company's growth wasn't just due to my efforts. The AI semiconductor developed by the CEO played a big part. The CEO told me my salary would increase, but I feared that if John found out about my sudden salary increase, he would exploit it. So, I kept my salary the same as it was at my previous company. Instead, I received company stocks as a form of compensation. Alex's wrongdoing involved inflating bills in collusion with a trading company. He made it look like the inflated charges were from an overseas company introduced by the trading company to avoid detection. He had been doing this for at least 2 years. The police are rigorously investigating him for other potential crimes. It was surprising that Alex could come up with such a scheme involving an overseas transaction, as it seemed too complicated for him to plan. The trading company claimed they did it reluctantly at Alex's request. I suspected there was a mastermind behind this plot. My gut feeling was that John might be involved. "You planned Alex's scheme, didn't you?" I asked John directly. John stuttered and fell silent. "No way, he did that on his own." "Really? He's been doing it for quite a while now. In a way, I think it's a remarkable talent." I taunted John to see his reaction. "Well, yes, but it's a crime. It's not right to call it talent. But using overseas companies might have been a smart idea." "So, you did plan it and had Alex carry it out." "Why would you think that?" "The part about using overseas companies wasn't reported in the media. The fact that you know about it means you were involved. You just revealed a secret." I could hear John grinding his teeth. "I'll report this to the police. Even if I don't, I think Alex will eventually confess." "Don't mess around. This is all your fault." John kept talking, but I hung up midway. I didn't want to talk to John anymore. After that, he called several times, but I ignored all of them. I understood that they were in trouble with Alex's arrest. But John had his own income. I couldn't fathom why they were so desperate for money. 3 months later, I got another call from John. I ignored it at first, but I needed to retrieve some belongings from the house, so I called John back. John said he wanted to meet because it was too much to discuss over the phone. I agreed and decided to visit the house. The next day, I went to the house where I had lived until. It was clear that the house had fallen into disrepair. Nothing seemed to have been maintained. The pathway to the entrance was covered in fallen leaves and stained with water spots. Even the doorbell didn't ring when I pressed it. Maybe it was broken. When I grabbed the doorknob, the door opened. It wasn't locked. As I stepped inside, a stale smell hit my nostrils. It was likely the smell of rotting garbage. They hadn't even taken out the trash. I called out loudly for John. After a while, a hoarse voice replied, and the door to the living room opened. I recoiled at the sight of the man who appeared. The man who appeared was emaciated, with sunken eyes, patchy and completely white hair. His complexion was unnaturally yellow. I stared at him, unable to recognize who he was. Then the man spoke. It was John's voice, to my surprise. Could a person change this much? John looked at me, his eyes widening. "You seem different somehow." "Do you think so? But this house has become quite neglected." John snorted and went back to the living room. I followed John into the living room and was shocked by what I saw. The room was littered with garbage. The room was littered with garbage, more like a trash house than just a messy one. John seemed unconcerned and sat down at the dining table. I attempted to sit too, but the table was cluttered with dirty dishes and glasses. Reluctantly, I carried the dirty dishes to the kitchen, which was also in a terrible state. The kitchen was also in a terrible state, but I chose to ignore it for now. After some tidying up, I sat down at the table and John handed me an envelope. It had a hospital's name printed on it. Curious, I looked inside and found a medical report. It was John's diagnosis. "I've got hepatitis." John spoke weakly. He used to drink heavily every day. I thought it was only a matter of time before his liver was affected, and now he had developed alcoholic hepatitis. He probably couldn't drink anymore. And a full recovery might be difficult. I read through the medical report. It also mentioned diabetes. I looked closely at John's face. "You also have diabetes. With these levels, it's likely you have cirrhosis too." "You figured it out." "It's probably cirrhosis," John said, looking down. "Should you even be here? Aren't you supposed to be in the hospital?" "Yeah, I wanted to talk to you, so I snuck out." This might be another one of John's strategies. Showing me this filthy house instead of a hospital, trying to gain my sympathy. I could see his sly intentions. "I don't feel sorry for you at all. You guys turned this house into this mess, and I don't live here anymore." John's face darkened. "You've changed. You seem stronger." Failing to elicit my sympathy, he now tried to flatter me. I couldn't quite gauge John's true intentions. Then, John began to talk about what had happened in the past 3 months. He said they lived normally for a while after I left. Alex's fiancé used to come twice a week to do housework. But then, Alex had a falling out with his fiancé, and they lost all contact. John and Alex didn't understand why she suddenly stopped communicating. Of course, they didn't. I had contacted her and strongly advised her to cut ties with Alex. She moved out, changed her phone number, and now lives in an apartment run by my acquaintance. I didn't want Alex's fiancé to end up like me. I met with her several times, explaining how despicable John and Alex were. Thanks to that, she woke up to Alex's vile nature and cut off all contact with him. Pretending to know nothing, I encouraged John to continue. Then, the house quickly became filled with garbage. It was no surprise, as I had been meticulously cleaning and taking out the trash every day. John coughed hoarsely. It was a wet, unpleasant cough. I took a mask out of my bag and put it on my face. Then came Alex's incident. This was also discovered by my company's investigation. After that, John's salary was their only source of income. Still, John seemed unable to break free from his lazy lifestyle. I looked around the room. There were empty liquor bottles and beer cans everywhere. It was clear what kind of life he led. In the end, I stopped making payments. The monthly rent of $2,000 must have been a heavy burden for John. John said with a trembling voice. "It's been 3 months since that phone call. Why won't you help me? Isn't this too much?" "Where is the reason to help you? Tell me, why should I?" "We're still married, aren't we? Alex is in trouble too. Don't you want to help him?" John clearly doesn't grasp what he has done to me. He's still selfish. Yes, exactly. I don't have the slightest desire to help you. John glared at me but soon looked down, defeated. Then, he looked up at me, begging. John's face twisted into a distorted smile. "Your company is loaded, right? They even bought out Alex's company. They must be raking in profits. So, use that money to sort this out." I sighed deeply. That's not my money. It's the company's money. You can't differentiate between personal and company funds, that's why you got into this mess. You should study more. But our family is in trouble. Help us out. We're not family anymore. You left the divorce papers I sent you as they were, right? Of course I did. I don't want to divorce. I tore them up every time. I looked at John coldly.
I've consulted a lawyer, and we're proceeding with a divorce through court. Normally, there would be mediation and discussion, but with the evidence of domestic violence and financial exploitation from John and Alex, I was able to take it to divorce court. John kept his head down, grinding his teeth. I said we're cutting ties. And you only contact me when you're in trouble. It's too convenient for you. We lived together all this time. I'm the one who married you. I hated that attitude. Always looking down on others but groveling before those stronger than you. You're the worst. That's too harsh. I've gotten sick. And it's an incurable disease. You could be a bit kinder to me. John looked up at me, trying to appeal with a pitiful face. There's no way I'll do that. You're probably just trying to sweet-talk me into being a donor for a transplant, but there's no way I'm doing that. John's expression vanished from his face. And you're going to be arrested by the police and end up in prison. You really told the police? John rose, pointing a finger at me. Of course I did. In the distance, the sound of a police siren could be heard. I stood up. John held his head, groaning inaudibly. I've cut ties with you. I have no intention of helping you. Pretending to be family only when it suits you. No matter how much you struggle financially or how miserable your life becomes, it has nothing to do with me. Go to hell, you scum. I left the trash-ridden house I had become accustomed to behind. John was arrested and received a guilty verdict. He's serving time in a medical prison. According to the lawyer, he's developed liver cancer from cirrhosis and doesn't have much time left. He'll likely spend the rest of his life in prison. I hope John reflects and atones for his sins. Alex confessed during interrogations that it was all John's plan. Alex tried to shift all the blame onto John. However, his contradictory statements were soon exposed, revealing his lies. The American police are quite capable. Given Alex showed no remorse, he received a severe prison sentence. His appeal was quickly rejected, and now he's incarcerated. Alex will have a hard time after release, with company repayments and alimony to his fiancée. He might even find prison more comfortable. Since standing up to John, I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I'm out and about more for work, and at the president's suggestion, I switched from glasses to contact lenses. Meeting more people, I started paying more attention to my appearance. Realizing that my attire affects others' attitudes. I began frequenting department store cosmetics sections, a place I once avoided. Places I would never have visited in the past now feel different. Initially intimidated, I learned not only about makeup but also about speech and posture, realizing the importance of appearance. Now, I dedicate time to grooming myself. I've noticed men looking my way more often, a new and curious experience for me. I used to be the one who averted my eyes, but now it's a curious feeling to see others do the same. My company has continued to grow steadily, and I have been appointed as an executive. Recently, in an executive meeting, the president announced his desire to focus on development and his intention to resign. Amidst the commotion, he nominated me as his successor. Surprised at first, I received blessings from all executives. Since then, my life has been filled with unfamiliar tasks and a hectic schedule. My days are busier but much more fulfilling than before. Thus, I've regained confidence and am enjoying life to the fullest. Childcare is a wife's job, isn't it? Not just childcare, but housework and taking care of the husband, it's all the wife's job. My husband, Michael, yelled at me with a contorted face. His words filled my heart with frustration and sadness. Unable to sort out my emotions, I stood there dumbfounded when I suddenly heard crying. Startled by Michael's loud voice, our twins had started crying at the same time. I hurried to soothe them, but Michael, annoyed by their crying, cursed and quickly left the house. Where did the kind husband I used to know go? When was the last time I saw him smile gently, the way I loved? He changed after we got married. He treats me like a housekeeper and behaves unreasonably. Even now, with our children born, his arrogant attitude remains the same. Moreover, he pushes all the childcare onto me,
demanding I handle the housework and his personal care as well. I had hoped that he might return to his kinder self after our children were born, but that hope was quickly shattered. How many times have I hoped and been disappointed by Michael? A sense of emptiness wells up inside me. Still, being on parental leave, I have no choice but to rely on him financially, so I grit my teeth and endure his unreasonable demands. Time passed, and one day when he came home from work, he said, "You know, I got laid off. So you're gonna have to support me now." He said it with a smirk, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. To that, I firmly replied, "Isn't it a husband's job to earn? I have no use for a husband who can't fulfill his duties. Get out." My name is Jennifer. I joined my current company right out of college, and before I knew it, I was almost 30. While my friends from school were getting married and finding happiness, I had been focused solely on my career and hadn't had any significant relationships. Feeling a bit anxious about this, I finally found a boyfriend. His name was Michael. Michael was a colleague who transferred to my department, and we hit it off at a company social event, leading to us dating. He was 2 years younger than me, but I really liked his calm and generous nature. After a few years of dating at work, we got married when I was 32. I thought I would have a happy married life with the gentle Michael, but his true colors showed soon after our marriage. Michael started treating me like a housekeeper from the first day we lived together. "Hey! What about dinner? I'm starving here." While I was busy unpacking from our move, Michael yelled from behind. Shocked by his rough tone and words, which I had never heard before, I froze. "Hey! Are you listening? Get dinner ready, now. Hey!" Yelled it again. I turned to Michael with a forced smile. "Sorry, I haven't finished setting up the kitchen yet. Should I go buy something from the store? Or maybe we can order delivery." Before I could finish, Michael clicked his tongue in irritation and walked towards the door. When I hurried after him, Michael glared at me and spat out, "I'll eat out." Then maybe I should come too?" I said that and hurried to get ready, but Michael abruptly shut me down with a "Don't come with me." I froze, my body trembling, as Michael continued in an irritated tone. "Make sure you finish cleaning up before I get back. Can't relax in such a cluttered room." With that, he roughly closed the door and left to eat alone. I stood there, stunned, rooted to the spot. Was that really Michael just now? I found myself muttering. The Michael I just saw was nothing like the always gentle and calm Michael I knew, filling me with anxiety. Maybe he was just really hungry. I held a faint hope that he might return to his usual self after eating out. But days passed, and the kind Michael never returned. However, at work, where others could see him, he behaved as gently as before. The drastic difference between Michael at work and at home made me wonder if he had a split personality. So, my life, far from the happy newlywed life I had imagined, continued, and about 2 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. Moreover, it wasn't just one baby, but twins. The realization that I was carrying twins filled my heart with joy. Even after finding out about the pregnancy, Michael's unreasonable behavior towards me at home didn't change, but I hoped that he would return to his kinder self once the children were born. Time passed, my belly grew significantly, and I took maternity and parental leave from work. And then, I successfully gave birth to twins. I was truly happy to have given birth to twins, but the task of caring for them was several times harder than I had imagined. Despite being prepared, the first-time parenting experience meant I spent every day incredibly busy. However, Michael didn't help at all. Instead, he tried to make me do all the housework and even take care of his personal needs as before the birth. Unable to take it anymore, I finally spoke up to Michael. "Hey, Michael. You can see I'm swamped with taking care of these kids. I can't possibly do everything. Can't you at least change a diaper or something?" At my words, Michael's face turned red with anger as he yelled at me. "Huh? Why should I have to do that? I'm the husband. A husband's job is to earn money outside. So, childcare is a wife's job, right? Not just childcare,
but housework and taking care of the husband, it's all the wife's job. Michael's words left my heart a mess of frustration and sadness. As I stood there, dazed and unable to sort out my emotions, I was jolted back to reality by a crying sound. Perhaps startled by Michael's loud voice, the twins started crying simultaneously. I rushed to soothe them, but Michael spat out, "Shut up. I can't stand this house," and fled outside. This behavior shattered any hope I had that he might become the kind man he was before once the children were born. How many times have I been hopeful and then disappointed by Michael? A sense of emptiness surged within me. Yet, during my maternity leave, I had no choice but to rely on Michael financially, so I gritted my teeth and endured it. I somehow managed to handle the twins' childcare, the bare minimum housework, and Michael's personal care. Since my parents live far away, they couldn't often come to help. I spent every night soothing the twins who cried at the same time, resulting in constant sleep deprivation. Amid these challenging days, I eventually became ill and had to be hospitalized. However, Michael, claiming he was busy with work, didn't even visit me. When my parents found out that I had collapsed, they immediately came to help and stayed at my house for about a week. They took care of me while I was in the hospital and also looked after the twins, who were steadily growing. Their support allowed me to focus on getting better. Meanwhile, Michael didn't visit me in the hospital, nor did he return home. My parents and I tried to contact him several times to no avail. He was purposely ignoring our calls, although we confirmed he was regularly going to work. What a terrible man, I muttered to myself on the hospital bed. At that moment, I completely gave up on relying on Michael for anything. Once I recovered and was discharged, I returned home, and my parents went back to theirs. A few days later, Michael casually returned home without any apology or words of concern for me. However, I no longer felt upset or angry with him. My feelings for Michael had completely cooled off. This hospitalization taught me the importance of relying on others. My parents scolded and cried over me, saying, "Why did you keep silent until you broke down? Why don't you ask for help? It doesn't matter that we live far away. If you just said you needed help when I called, we would have come no matter where we lived. Raising children is tough, especially two. Use whatever help you can get. We understand you don't want to trouble us, but you ended up harming yourself and being unable to care for your children. Of course, Michael is the main problem, but you staying silent and thinking you have no choice but to handle everything yourself is also an issue." Hearing my parents' tearful and trembling voices, I realized I had chosen to silently comply with Michael's way of life. From then on, I learned to seek help from those around me, not just my parents. I started utilizing community childcare support services to find time for myself and joined a community of parents raising twins. Just knowing I wasn't alone brought me a sense of mental relief. Surprisingly, Michael, who had once seemed so terrifying, no longer scared me. He was just a coward. Perhaps he was accumulating too much stress at work, and he made me his outlet. He probably felt superior because he was financially supporting me, who was overwhelmed with taking care of the kids. His not harming the children wasn't due to any ethical sense. He just knew the disadvantages he would face if something happened to them, having seen tragic incidents on TV. Strangely, Michael and I had been getting along for over half a year. I took care of the housework and childcare because that's supposedly a wife's job. And Michael earned the money, as that's a husband's duty. There was no love between us, and he did nothing fatherly, but he did provide a stable environment with food, clothing, and shelter. Amidst this life, the twins grew up well and turned one. When they finally started daycare, I cried tears of relief the first time I left them there. Even though it was only for an hour during the adjustment period. It felt liberating to have some time to myself. Once the kids completed the adjustment period and started full-day daycare, I promptly returned to work. I had planned to return to work coinciding with their daycare start, but I had to take it as days off during the adjustment period. Working again, I found myself genuinely smiling. The twins are adorable, but conversing with adults who can speak properly was calming. Whether it was with colleagues or my boss, and even if the discussions were about work, I felt fulfilled every day.
I was determined to work hard and save up money. Just when I was thinking this, Michael came home from work and blurted out, "You know, I got laid off. So now you gotta support me." I had heard rumors about staff reductions happening soon at his company, and it seemed Michael was one of those let go. He was never great at his job, making careless mistakes and even once shredding important documents. He probably got by for a while due to his good nature at work, but it looks like they finally gave up on him. "It's good timing since you're returning to work now. From now on, you can support me," he said with a smirk. I let out a huge sigh at Michael's command and firmly told him, "What are you even saying? Support you? Don't be ridiculous. You didn't help at all with childcare when it was most difficult and made me do all the housework and personal care, and now you have the audacity to say that?" It was the first time I had raised my voice so much, and Michael seemed quite shocked. He stood with his mouth half open and eyes wide. But then he snapped back to reality and yelled, "You! What kind of way is that to talk to your husband?" Unintimidated by Michael's yelling, I continued, "You said childcare is a wife's job, right? So, earning money is the husband's job, isn't it? I have no use for a husband who can't fulfill his duties. Get out." "Huh? Get out? Calm down a bit," Michael stammered, unable to hide his confusion. "I'm saying we should get divorced. I'm better off without a husband like you. Please leave quickly," I said coldly, and Michael's face turned pale. "Are you serious?" "Of course I am. After all you've done, why wouldn't I want a divorce?" Michael stammered, and because. Over and over. We had been living like this since the beginning of our marriage. He thought I wanted this life because I hadn't mentioned divorce before. That's ridiculous. I only didn't say anything because my savings alone wouldn't have been enough to raise the kids until I could return to work. When I was hospitalized, I had been preparing to divorce you. Despite feeling boiling anger inside, the words that came out were shockingly cold. Realizing my determination, Michael glared at me and spat out his last words in defiance. "Fine. I'll leave. I've had enough of a useless wife like you." And with that, Michael stomped towards the front door. On his way out, Michael kept muttering to himself in a loud voice, saying things like, "If you're gonna apologize, now's the time. Going back to work with twins will just cause trouble at the workplace, and you can't live without me." Without responding to any of it, I just followed him to the door and turned around. "This is your last chance. You got something to say to me, right?" he asked, his face red with anger yet sweating profusely, a bizarre expression. I just smiled at him and said, "Don't worry about the divorce papers, I'll file them." Hearing this, Michael's face contorted with a big sigh, and he angrily clicked his tongue. As he reached for the door, he glared back at me and yelled, "Don't you dare regret this," before storming out. The moment he left, I quickly locked the door and put on the chain. I let out a sigh of relief, followed by a dry laugh. There's no way I would regret this. I immediately went to Michael's bedroom, opened the wardrobe, and took out the divorce papers. I knew that he had hidden a pre-filled divorce form in the back of this wardrobe since right after the twins were born. He had threatened to divorce me if I couldn't handle the housework and childcare. I quickly filled in my part and went to the office with the twins to submit the divorce papers. After returning home, I called a locksmith to change the locks on the front door to ensure Michael couldn't enter. I sent a brief message to Michael, informing him about the filing of the divorce papers and the changing of the locks. Soon after, I returned to work full-time. The twins were doing well, happily crying, laughing, eating, and enjoying their time at daycare. I cherished the peaceful days that followed. Then, about 6 months after the divorce, something intriguing happened at work. One of my subordinates, Lily, a very popular and beautiful young employee among the male staff, started making odd remarks to me. "Jennifer, Michael is really not a morning person, right? He hardly ever wakes up, and it troubles me every day." "What?" "You know, I love cooking, so I make a lot of breakfast, but he's such a sleepyhead that it often gets cold before he eats. She bragged about this with a smug grin. But when I tried to inquire more, Lily quickly said, "Oh, what am I saying? Please forget what I just said," and refused to speak any further. From her comments, I was convinced that Michael was now living at Lily's place. After being kicked out by me, Michael had tried to go back to his parents, but it seems his in-laws disowned him, saying that a husband abandoned by his wife and children is a disgrace. I had little contact with my in-laws, who lived quite far away and were rather old-fashioned and difficult people. Recently, I received a call from my father-in-law, apologizing and informing me about their disowning of Michael.
Jennifer, it's been a while. I heard from Michael. I'm really sorry about our son. We've disowned him. We regret not being able to help you before.
And then, I even received words of support, saying that I could ask for help with anything if I ever faced any trouble. This is probably how Michael, having been kicked out of his parents' home and with nowhere else to go, ended up moving into Lily's house. Lily began to repeatedly tell me things like, "I'm the only one who really understands Michael," and "I'm glad that nuisance is finally out of the way." From her statements, I was convinced that the two of them had been having an affair since Michael and I were married. I gathered evidence through other employees' testimonies and hiring a private investigator. As a result, I managed to collect definitive proof of their affair during our marriage. Lily had been openly talking to colleagues about her relationship with Michael and had boasted by sending several photos of them looking intimate. Some clearly taken in a hotel, making it relatively easy to gather evidence of their affair. Armed with this conclusive evidence, I consulted a lawyer and sued both Michael and Lily for damages. Michael yelled, "Why now?" to which I replied, "It's all because of Lily." When Lily confronted me screaming in a high-pitched voice, I just smiled sweetly and said,
"Thanks for confessing that you've been having an affair with Michael all along. Honestly, I had no idea he was cheating. But, thanks to you, I was able to gather evidence and sue both of you for damages."
Lily twisted her once beautiful face into something monstrous as she yelled at me. However, it was her fault for trying to assert dominance over me for a moment of superiority. She could have stayed silent and nothing would have been revealed. I responded with the biggest smile I've had recently, reminding her to quickly pay the alimony. A few days after the alimony demand, Michael called me.
"Jennifer, it's been a while."
His voice lacked the fierceness it once had, sounding weak and defeated.
"If you have something to say, please go through my lawyer. I'm hanging up now."
As I firmly stated this, Michael began to sound desperate.
"Wait! Look, I can't pay the alimony. I haven't found a new job yet. I was being supported by Lily."
"Your circumstances are none of my concern. Please pay the alimony." I said this dismissively, and I could hear Michael sniffling over the phone.
"Don't be so cold. Lily broke up with me. I didn't know she was so heartless."
Apparently, Michael had tried to raise money for my alimony by selling Lily's cherished designer bags and clothes without her knowledge, which led to Lily finding out and promptly dumping him.
"I got kicked out of Lily's place, and now I'm just staying at a motel. My savings are almost gone. I can hardly afford food."
I don't care. Just make sure to pay the alimony."
"What's with that attitude? Your ex-husband is suffering here. Can't you show a little compassion?"
Michael's voice was filled with tears, desperately appealing to me. I sighed deeply and replied,
"I had many difficult times too, but you never helped me.
Why do you think you deserve help now? Goodbye." And with that, I unhesitatingly ended the call. I think I heard Michael scream as I hung up, but I felt no pity for him. Meanwhile, Lily also approached me at work, crying,
"Jennifer, please, cancel the alimony claim. I've been supporting Michael all this time. I don't have any money."
She tried to cry her way out of it after her anger and stubbornness failed to sway me. Her overly dramatic crying didn't elicit the slightest bit of sympathy from me.
"That's not my problem. Besides, this is a workplace. Aren't you ashamed to expose your disgrace like this?"
Lily's loud wails drew the attention of not only our department but also employees from other departments. She probably wanted to isolate me as the heartless woman who wouldn't respond to her tears, but it was clear from the looks of my colleagues that nobody sided with Lily. The situation escalated to the point where our manager had to step in, and Lily, who was acting like a madwoman, was told to stay home for a few days. Although I hadn't spread the news about Lily and Michael throughout the company, her shouting made the whole story public. Afterward, it was discovered that Lily had also been involved with another married man. As a result, she was transferred to a department known for being a bit tough. This transfer effectively meant a demotion for her, as her salary was reduced. The department she was moved to is full of strong-willed and strict part-time ladies. Naturally, these ladies in her new department were aware of Lily's affair and the alimony demands against her, so they were very cold towards her and often made sarcastic comments. Lily, crying every day, kept saying she wanted to quit. But she couldn't resign due to her debts and the alimony she owed me, leading her to endure tough days. When I recently passed by Lily at the office, she had lost all her former glamour, wearing a somber and gloomy air. Our eyes met briefly, but she, apparently too exhausted to appeal to me anymore, awkwardly looked away without saying a word. As for Michael, he managed to find a cheap, run-down apartment but was struggling with his job search. His inability to take care of himself left him looking disheveled, and he was rejected from all full-time job applications. He resorted to working long hours in day labor jobs, suffering from lack of sleep and loneliness. Still, he was trying his best to pay the alimony, as indicated in his voicemail messages. Michael regularly left updates about his life on my answering machine, always ending his messages the same way. "Hey, Jennifer. I feel like I'm going to collapse living like this. Continuing to pay the alimony is just too hard. There's no hope for the future." His attempt to gain my sympathy, likely hoping I'd reduce the alimony, was transparent, so I'm considering blocking his calls. After my divorce from Michael, I thought I was done with marriage, but then I had a wonderful encounter. I met a single father in a community for parents raising twins. Coincidentally, we lived close to each other and began to help each other out. He had also been cheated on by his ex-wife and had gone through a period of distrust in people, becoming quite withdrawn. However, he cherished his children and said they were the reason he managed to pull through. We had many things in common and shared our struggles, which naturally brought us closer. Our children got along well too, so we decided to get remarried. Now, we're a lively family of 6, enjoying our days together.